Hello, everybody who is tuning in at any point during the show. My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back. This is not movie Battleground. We still don't have the full graphics or anything for the show, but fuck it. Who cares? Welcome back to the second edition of Battleground Casual. This is a new weekly discussion show that we're going to be having here on the channel. I am your host, Aaron Knoll. Joining me, as always, or mostly as always, is my cohort, Matt Beer. Matt, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. IU just got a big win just a little bit ago. Now they're, I believe, depending on what happens tomorrow, they'll be second in the Big Ten. So it's been a good day.
Football, I think, right?
Basketball.
Yeah?
Basketball for that one.
Basketball. Fuck. Okay. All right. I tried, guys. I tried. Uh, I tried. I did. No. So we are here. So last week, obviously, we spent the entirety of the show discussing all the DC news and sort of everything that happened with that. But this episode is sort of, I guess, like the pilot test for how we're normally going to run the episodes. We have a couple of panel members here for the discussion. One of them, as we will try to do each week, is in line with the Battleground matches this week. His first Battleground match of the season went up, and I guess spoiler alert for those who haven't checked it out yet. It went very, very well for him. Joining us for the first time on the show, we have Tyler Birch. Tyler, welcome. How are you doing tonight?
Doing good. Yeah, excited to talk about some movies. Now I'm upset I wasn't here last week because I'd be a lot more suited for talking about DC stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be plenty more opportunities in the future to talk about DC and the numerous hate that Snyder fans are giving them. So
That's fine. They're gonna sell it to Netflix because that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
yeah, so let's
sell some of your IP
Netflix
over to
just
another
so
company.
Snyder can make his dream. And also joining us tonight, like we said, each week we're going to bring in people who are tied into the matches this week. But we also just have some fun people around the community that we'll bring in to discuss things. And this week we are joined by Mr. Jake Tato. Jake, welcome to the show. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, even though I have no idea what we're doing. Should be fun.
We are. Don't worry. There's no trivia. We're not going to test you. We're not going to ask you questions. We are just going to be talking about movie news because each week there is new movie news, new movie stories. Some weeks are bigger than others, but we have a couple of discussion topics based off things that were announced this week. I have drafted these together, and we will go ahead and get into it. And the first one is, and the panelists and the people at home, bear with me while I do the read up for this to kind of inform you guys, is the question that is in the title of the show. Now, obviously, the hashtag itself is not something that is actively being used on Twitter, but I felt like it was the best way to sort of personify what this is. But a few years ago, you guys will remember there was the hashtag Oscar So White campaign, and this was after 2 years of nominations back to back. In the acting categories, between 40 nominees, only one of them was not white, and it led to this hashtag on Twitter, Oscar So White, that sort of forced the Oscars into a public light that was not so friendly to them. And it did all sorts of things. It caused the Academy to look at its voting base, to start changing its rules to include members who were younger at an earlier age. It also allowed them to diversify the groups of people who were within the Oscar voting base, again, as part of the rule changes and sort of opening up what qualifies you to be a voting member of the Academy. It also allowed Chris Rock to make jokes that could offend people that didn't get him slapped that year at the Oscars, which was very fun. I'm sure if they were there, Brad Pitt would have said something about him making fun of his and Angelina Jolie's movie, but it is what it is. So let's get into it. So this year, the big issue that's kind of at the forefront is the lack of diversity in some of the nominations. And specifically, we'll get into The Woman, King, and Till. So the write-up that I've put together here, so over the course of the Oscar, or the build-up to the Oscar race, there are always multiple films that look like leaders of the pack that may not receive the attention people thought they would. This is a normal aspect of the Oscar race that happens yearly. 3 such films this year were Jada Prince Bythewood's The Woman King, Chinonye Chukwu, and I probably butchered that film, Till, and Alice Diop's Saint Omer. But what stood out to people was when all 3 films were snubbed completely of nominations in the categories people thought they would get. Many have questioned if the Academy still has apparent issues with race, following years of very public changes to solve the previous public confrontation of racial issues, which culminated in the social media hashtag OscarsSoWhite. In a recent interview with The Hollywood Reporter, the director of The Woman King, Gina Prince Bythewood, spoke about her experience campaigning for the film. The following is her quote. The Woman King wasn't snubbed. A snub is if it missed out on a category or two. Not a single extraordinary performance was recognized, and when that has happened for a successful film that hit all the so-called markers, it's not a snub. It's a reflection of where the Academy stands and the consistent chasm between Black excellence and recognition. And sadly, this is not just an issue in Hollywood, but in every industry. As I moved through this award season, I was struck by the Academy members who simply didn't want to see the film. People thought it was a compliment at some of our screenings to tell me that they had to be dragged there because they didn't think it was a film for them, or spoke of contemporaries who couldn't be convinced to come with them and being so surprised by how much they loved the film. To hear that over and over, it's tough to stomach. We, Black women, do not get that same grace. So the question we need to ask is, why is it so hard to relate to the work of your Black peers? What is this inability of Academy voters to see Black women, their humanity, their heroism, as relatable to themselves? In addition to any other nominations people would have supported, the main snub for the public was that Viola Davis and Daniel Deadwyler both missed out on the Best Actress award after being considered locks for the nomination. This is also following the public questioning of some of the nominees on the ballot, namely Ana de Armas for Blonde, Michelle Williams for The Fabelmans, and Andrea Riseborough, who was nominated through not normal campaigning, but a grassroots campaign fueled through Hollywood support of stars. So to run some stats as well for anyone who would like to make their own judgment on this year's Oscars, of our 10 Best Picture nominees, 9 out of 10 are majority led by white actors. Of our 6 Best Director nominees, 5 of them are white. And of our 20 actor or actress nominees, 13 of them are white. And of the 8 non-white ones, 4 of them are Asian, meaning other races are limited to just 4 nominees. So the question is the Oscars still #SoWhite? And we do have another member of our panel that's joined us in the background while I was busy reading that document. We are also joined by a fellow competitor who had his match go up this week as well, and he also had a good time in the Battleground this week. We are joined by Raymond. Madi, welcome to the show, man.
Hey,
Madi.
I like how
All
you
right,
guys
so
were talking
this
about
is-
being so white, and then you brought in the non-white.
I didn't want to
Thank
draw
God.
attention to that, okay? Listen, it was a very pasty panel beforehand. Now we got a little tan going on. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out here into the open because we obviously have very different opinions, right? I myself, I like the Oscars. I like award season. I like watching all the films. I like seeing sort of what the race is. Behind the scenes, we were talking, Tyler, I know you said you're kind of the opposite. You're not as much into the award season stuff. Jake, you didn't know what you were signing up for until 2 minutes ago. So I'm just going to throw it out on the table, whoever wants to take this first. And that is the question on the table, is following the apparent on the surface lack of diversity of the nominations this year, is the concept of #OscarsSoWhite still a concern that needs to be thought of? And whoever wants to take it, go ahead, run with it.
I'd say yeah, I guess. I haven't seen the films, so I cannot 100% speak to this, but looking at the nominations, it's definitely a pretty pasty panel over there, too. So I do think it's definitely something to be concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I decided to look at the numbers and run the numbers just to see if it made it look better or worse. And I think when you look at the straight numbers, it definitely makes it look worse. What are some other thoughts, if anybody has something they want to throw in?
Why was Ana de Armas
Go ahead, Madi. Sorry.
I was gonna say, why was Ana de Armas nominated when there was performances like Viola Davis that easily could have been nominated? Like Andrea Riseborough, okay, yeah, sure, she deserves the nomination because it's a hell of a performance. But when you have someone nominated who's not that great in the movie over women of color who are given. I mean, Viola Davis is another Tuesday for her to get a nomination, but at this point, it's yeah, she deserves the same level of prestige. She was really good in the movie. Why not give her a nomination, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't seen Till yet, but I have seen The Woman King, and I absolutely personally, if I were just picking 5 nominees, I would have nominated her for that film, certainly over some of the others, because you're right. Ana de Armas, and the thing with this is And I don't know how much anyone here knows about the situation with Andrea Riseborough's nomination and sort of the way that she got nominated, but that is what everybody is focusing on as like she stole the nomination from people, is kind of the image that's being framed. But I'd argue that the two to look at are Michelle Williams and Ana de Armas, because exactly, Ana de Armas is fine in a not so great film. So that one to me was extremely curious. I mean, back to back, the movie got 8 Razzie nominations and then she picked up an Oscar nomination. Now she was not nominated for a Razzie, but still the movie's not great, but she picked up an Oscar nom off of it. And then Michelle Williams, there are people who have argued, and I sort of agree with them, that her performance is a little over the top at times, which maybe suits the film, but it doesn't help the performance. But then there's also the argument that she shouldn't be nominated for lead actress. She is technically a supporting actor in the film. The lead is the kid, the Spielberg sort of presentation. So how did she end up in the leading category anyways?
I feel like she does qualify for a leading category. I mean, you can have more than one lead in a movie, because not only was it about, Spielberg, but it also was kind of about her too. Like, it was about the family in general, but mostly about her when it comes to the family. Now, I haven't seen The Woman King. I haven't seen Till. I just hadn't had time to go see either one. But based on what I saw in Blonde, I'm sure Viola Davis or Deadweiler deserved it over her. And I haven't seen To Leslie as well, so I don't know if she deserved it as well. But I don't think the Oscar so white thing should be applied this year, because I mean, you look at the other categories. You have actor, supporting category, 2 non-white people were nominated in there. Leading actress, 1 non-white, Angela Bassett, Hong Chow, and then Stephanie Sue, I believe is how you say your last name, from Everything Everywhere. They all got nominated. It's not like back when the hashtag was started where it was like one person maybe of color got nominated.
Right.
Again,
it certainly has become more. It is more diverse than it was.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, so before I was going to jump at something else, Tyler, I'll turn it over to you if you have any thoughts, because again, as you said before we started, you're not somebody who's inclined to care about the Academy or sort of what the Academy is saying is the best. So do you have any thoughts separate on the situation as it's been presented, I guess?
I mean, you guys have said, like I said, I don't really pay attention to a lot of the Oscar stuff. Sometimes after the fact, I'll go and see the movies that they talk about and nominate. But you guys have said a lot of the same things that I've been thinking about. How it's there just isn't that much representation. If Viola Davis's performance in Woman King was anything like the trailer, then she's dynamite, and she should have gotten the nomination for sure. I think the one thing that really interests, that I always noticed about the Oscars, and I noticed this year especially, is we're like, oh yeah, there's these many people that aren't white that are nominated, but if you really look at it, most of them, it's like they chose a flagship movie that was created by people of color, with Everything Everywhere All at Once, and they just nominated a bunch of people from that. So I think if you take Everything Everywhere All at Once out of the equation, you notice that there's the room gets a lot lighter.
Yes.
And so I think that's really interesting.
And you again, to go back to the numbers that I ran, you're 100% correct on that, because the one non-white led Best Picture nominee is Everything Everywhere All at Once. All 9 others have majority white leading cast. Of the 6 nominated directors, Daniel Kwan of Everything Everywhere All at Once is the one who is non-white. And 4 of those 8 non-white acting nominees do come, or sorry, 3 of them, excuse me. Jamie Lee Curtis is very white, but the other 3 are non-white nominees that come from that film. So you're right, certainly, and that's actually an interesting observation, because I feel like that very much is a thing. Like, if you go back a couple of years, like even some of the blockbuster picks, right? Like we had Get Out and Black Panther back to back, and it felt like Black Panther especially so stands out because it was in a year where Green Book then won Best Picture, and there's definitely questions to be centered around that of like it. I mean, in a year where that many films that centered on race relations and issues, both present and past, came out, the one where the white guy was the lead won. So, that's a question in and of itself.
Right.
So the other thing is with the Oscars, because my opinion on this is, I think there's two major issues that stem these problems, that create these issues with the Academy. The first is the industry itself. Like I just think, because people are often quick to look at awards and say like, well, why didn't you nominate more diverse options? And as maybe dickheaded as it sounds, I would say because most of the best films of the year were white led, but that's not meant to be a praise. That's meant to say that the industry is not necessarily giving as many opportunities to people of color, no matter what the race is, to get into that position to make films that can be viewed of that certain quality. If you know what I mean. I mean, even then, we're talking about, because Saint Omer, which is the third one that's mentioned in that article, was France's submission for Best International Feature Film. So that probably wouldn't have gotten much outside of that one nomination, but even then it didn't pick that nomination up. But when you look at Till and The Woman King, they were completely snubbed of nominations across the board, but they were also the only two black-led films that were even really in the discussion, it feels like. And I feel like that systemically is what the problem is there's just not enough opportunity, and there's not enough films being made by people of color to put the equality more, and that then creates an issue than the award system itself of what you're nominating. The other thing, when you're focusing specifically on the actors, is the way that they vote for nominees. And this is going to get a bit technical, but if anyone doesn't know, they use what's called a ranked choice system. And so essentially what that means is when you submit a nominees, you're submitting 5 nominees as an actor, and you're ranking them 1 to 5. Like, this is my first, this is my second, this is my third, this is my fourth. And the ballots are counted as this person got this many first place finishes, this person got this many second place finishes, this many got this person, third place finishes, and so on and so forth. And that's how they calibrate who are the nominees. And so and this is part of what led into Andrea Riseborough's nomination, is there were multiple people who spoke publicly about her film and sort of showed support for To Leslie, but they were phrasing to other actors, essentially, oh, there are other actresses who are considered potential locks for the award, so vote them second, third, fourth, and vote Andrea Riseborough first to make sure that she has a chance at getting in, is sort of how it was being phrased to people. And so what that means is, if an actress, so like the way that it was explained to me, and I hope I'm explaining this correctly, is if, let's say, Daniel Deadwyler was nominated on every single actor in the industry who submitted a ballot nominated Daniel Deadwyler, but they nominated her fourth consistently. She consistently got fourth place voting finishes. If there were enough actresses who picked up enough first place finishes to outrank her, even if she's on everybody's list, she wouldn't get a nomination, because she was outranked by the fact that there were more actresses who picked up consistent first place finishes over her. And I think that is the second part of the problem, is, if I can be quite frank, the way they do the voting is fucking stupid. It's really...
it is.
And I explained this to a buddy of mine who's like not in the film world. He asked a question once and I explained how they vote to him. And his answer to me was, so why isn't that just the winner? Because if you're calculating amongst actors who picked up the most first place finishes, why are you even doing a second round of voting in the first place? Because theoretically you've done the math already, right? And that's exactly it. It's like I think that system of nominating people is really, really stupid, and it leads to situations like this where, potentially Viola Davis or Daniel Deadwyler, if everyone assumed that they were a lock to get nominated, so they were consistently getting ranked third, fourth, fifth instead of being put up there, that's how someone like Ana de Armas, who maybe only 20% of the Academy voted for her, but if they were putting her in first place for whatever reason, she would shoot up over them then. If that makes sense? I mean, it doesn't make sense, but if it makes sense in terms of the explanation.
I see what you're saying, but my whole, I guess, counterpoint to the whole how they're voting right now and why not just have that be your final vote is, when they vote again, maybe they change their mind as far as who they view as the better performer of the two. But again, I agree with you that the whole how they get the nominees. It's pretty dumb, but I guess my counterpoint is for them doing another vote is maybe not just with the acting categories, but with, best movie and production. Maybe they change their mind.
And also what happens when things you voted for don't get in. Like, I would put Clerks 3 on my ballot, but Clerks 3 is not getting in, obviously. So then I have to vote for not Clerks 3.
True. And also the easy counter answer to that is when it comes to voting for the winners, the entire Academy is voting. So,
Right.
when you're nominating, only actors can vote on nominating other actors. But when you're voting for the winners, everybody who's in the Academy gets to put in a vote for the winner. So that's the easy answer.
Mm.
But
Yeah,
at least to
that
me,
too.
and I just wonder if anybody else has any thoughts based on the way I've explained it. I personally just think the ranked choice voting system is stupid. Like,
It's
the
flawed,
blunt way of
for
putting it.
sure.
I think that it's a really
It's dumb.
weird way of selecting nominees. And I think
Mm.
it'd make more sense to just, here's the 5, and then whichever 5 names were thrown in the most should get nominated, rather than who picked up the most first places compared to this person picking up consistent 4th places. Or
So
if that
people
makes
just
sense.
send in an unranked 5.
Yeah,
As
like
opposed
just
to ranked
alphabetically, here's my 5. That would, to me, would make far more sense than the way that it goes on now. If anyone, Tyler, Medee, if you guys have thoughts.
I'm with it.
No, I agree with you. I think that's how you should do it. Like,
Yeah, I don't really understand why you would have weights like that.
and then go from there.
Yeah, it is a weird system. Which I guess I'll bring it back to the final point before we move on is Gina Prince Bythewood's quote, her from her interview with THR, talking about and again, it's the question of, like, is Oscar so white still a concern? The biases within the Academy itself, right? Because, like, if you were a filmmaker, and anyone can sort of pick this up, if you were a filmmaker or any type of artist in any way, how would you feel if somebody said to you, like, oh, I didn't think I would enjoy your work. I had no interest in coming, but somebody dragged me here and I ended up really liking it.
Yeah, we can all agree. The diversity stuff, it needs to get better. We need to get better when it comes to inclusion and all that. And if you're going to be a voter with the Academy, with the, Hollywood Foreign Press, whoever, watch the movies. Don't be like, well, so-and-so's in it, so I don't know if I like it. No, if you're voting and you're just not going to be one of those people that's like, I'll vote this Marvel movie, I'll vote this DC movie, whatever. That's all I go see. There you go. Then whatever. But if you're going to take it serious, you should actually go see the movies, regardless of if you feel like you're going to like it or not like it. That's how it should be.
The fact that people have the privilege of voting and don't go see the movies blows my mind.
Yeah, they do screenings
and it's
all the time.
Especially nowadays, it's so incredibly accessible, because there was this was something I learned this year, and to give credit where it's due, some of the information that I've gotten from this comes from the article, and some of the information also comes from, if anyone is a fan of Dan Murrell, he did a video breaking down a lot of this as well, and he goes into it way more than I would ever do on this. It's like a whole 45-minute video for anyone who's interested. But he talks about the fact that, and this was something new that I learned, apparently now there is an app that Academy members can download, and on it, if not literally giving you digital access right there from the app, it at least tells you what movies are being pitched into consideration. So there's literally a list that you can just get access to of everything that is actively campaigning, and a bunch of them are right there for you to view at home. You don't have to wait for a physical screener. You don't have to go to an Academy screening. You can just watch it at home, and it's all right there. So again, the idea that you have something like The Woman King, which was clearly campaigning for Oscars, it was going heavy for it. They invested money into the campaign, and you have people that are like, man, like, I didn't think I'd like this movie, but here I am, and it's cool. Like, that is just such a insane, like, idea to me. And that's even beyond the race concept of it, right? Like, if you're a member of the Academy, do your due diligence, see the movies that are legitimately campaigning. You know what I mean? Because not every movie is legitimately campaigning to try and be an Oscar film. There's set things that people do.
Yeah, it's kind of dumb. Like, again, I can understand maybe some of the people that don't really care about voting, and they're just like, I'll go watch a couple movies, but I'm focusing on acting. I understand them, but if you take it serious and you go see the movies, like if you're actually going to go in and you're going to vote and you're actually going to look at it, as a serious thing instead of just like I'll just kind of toss in Adam Sandler for name the Netflix movie he's in. If you're gonna take it serious, do it. And look, I understand if you don't want to see a movie because everybody's saying it's terrible and bad and they're trying to push for an Oscar campaign, okay, don't go see it. But if it's getting some love, at least go see it. I mean, it's not hard. I mean, if you're doing nothing, it's 2 hours of your day.
Well, I was going to say, and certainly, I mean, if you look it up, The Woman King got, like, to use that as an example, got more than some love. The movie was critically praised beyond belief. Like, it was,
Right.
it was very much like. Has anyone else here seen it? Just out of sheer curiosity.
I haven't seen it. I'm gonna watch it. I think.
Okay.
In the next week.
Just before we wrap up, what are your thoughts on the film? Like, as someone who's seen it, because for me personally, it's at the bottom of it, but it is in my top 10 of this year. I think it's an excellent film. Do you think it was worthy enough to be in the competition for the Oscars compared to what else is there?
For Best Picture or for like some of the acting stuff?
For any of it, just in general, because it was campaigning for everything,
Best Picture, I'd give it like an outside shot. Like,
sure,
I liked it more than I liked a few of the other movies, but I understand that, like, Fabelmans and some of those other ones are going to get in based on.
Right.
For acting, I thought Viola Davis should have definitely been nominated. I thought directing wise was an outside shot as well, like probably fourth or fifth choice, maybe sixth.
Right.
And then, am I back? I don't know what happened.
You're good. I can still hear you. Your camera's just frozen.
Okay. All right. Fuck it. But yeah, so directing would be an outside shot, and then I thought stuff like production design and costume design, which it didn't get. I thought it was a lock for. Like, I thought it was for sure going to get those, and it didn't get nominated either.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, even you look at like Black Panther, which also dabbles in terms of costume design and set design, like African culture, that also picked up nominations in those types of categories. So you would think that The Woman King, being the more Oscar friendly of the two, would pick that up as well.
What was the other? Sorry, I don't have the list off the top of my head. Do you know the other ones that were nominated for like costume design?
I can pull it up real quick.
I remember
somebody else wants to film.
Yeah, I got it. It's Wakanda Forever, Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Babylon for costume design.
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So the one about Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, I've never even heard of.
It's an old British lady movie.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's a period
I elected the pass on that movie.
But I was like, I don't know, like that. Some of these movies, like, yeah, I get it. Like Babylon has that.
Sure, Babylon, I get.
It comes in, sure. Wakanda Forever, it makes sense. But I definitely thought that it should have been up there for a few other of like the technical ones. That just whatever.
Oh, for sure. And like production design, the nominees were All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar, Babylon, Elvis, and The Fabelmans. And I certainly think in terms of production, like I would nominate it over a couple of those.
Yeah,
because I think most of Avatar's production design is VFX, anyways.
Yeah, like I don't know if that even like qualifies technically.
I mean, it does.
I mean,
they nominated it.
Like, this is the best production design. That's a whole other. Like, it's a different category altogether. Also,
yeah, like what set did they use? Because it's not even like at least like so something like the Batman, which filmed on the volume, which is. Well, I was gonna say, like, if you look like the Batman, which filmed on the volume, which is like that screen sound stage they used in like the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
That's still a physical set where they're implementing things around you, and it's just the screen serves as the background. Like Avatar is completely CGI. They filmed in a water tank.
Should be in there for best animated movie instead of.
Yeah,
like I'm not trying to diss VFX or anything like that, but I'm just saying like it's almost in that category. You know what I mean? Like,
look, we already have one animated film that barely counts, we don't need to.
I was gonna say if Marcel the Shell with Shoes On qualifies for best animated feature, where it's literally just if I recorded my room and just put an animated shell in it, like if that counts, then I think Avatar counts because it's all CGI with a couple people that are live action.
Listen, man, don't get me
Also-
started on that. That barely.
That's a whole other. I want to go back to
That's
another
a
point.
whole
that you guys
nother
made.
like, whoa, dude.
There's another point that you guys made earlier. It's like, they're not able to relate to stuff. If I walked into, I don't know, Jaws, for example, and I said, "Oh, I didn't know I would like this movie. I can't relate to white people on a boat." Like it's the same basic argument, but it's like it's on the other end.
Like I was gonna to build off your point because your dog was barking. Like the relatability thing is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Because I'm gonna run through I'm gonna run through the Best Picture nominees real quick. Tell me if you can relate to any of the premises of these films. Being a soldier in World War One, living on the planet of Pandora. Being
Pandora at Disney.
lonely Irishman on a small island where your friend ignores you.
I have no
being
friends.
Elvis.
In the shower.
Living in the multiverse. Being Steven Spielberg. Being a famous composer who sexually assaulted someone and got Me Too'd.
Yeah, that I can.
Being Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what Triangle of Sadness is about, but I know there's a shipwreck. So has anybody here ever been in a shipwreck?
No.
No? Okay. And then women talking, I've never been a woman, nor have I ever been raped, thankfully.
Hey,
Thank God.
I've been around a bunch of women talking. I was basically Ben Winshaw, just sitting there while a bunch of women talk, and I just kind of write some things.
Well, good for you.
That's how I relate to it.
So yeah, like in terms of relatability, I can't relate to most of the actual plots of these films. Yeah. So that's also a very dumb comment. But does anyone have any final thoughts on this before we move on? We spent 30 minutes on the opening topic. I feel like we've said about as much as we can say. Does anyone have any wrap-up thoughts, or are you guys ready to move on?
Like I said, we need to get better when it comes to inclusion. We need to give more opportunities to people. And there's a lot of people that deserve opportunities that don't get the opportunities. Would I say that Oscar So White qualifies this year? Not necessarily. I mean, there were a lot more people of different color and different race that were nominated compared to previous years. I mean, look, Ana de Armas, I don't think she should have been nominated. She's Cuban in Spanish, so I mean, she's not technically. I mean, she's technically not white, but whatever. Still, I think I haven't seen The Woman King or Till, but I think both Viola Davis and Danielle Deadwyler, they probably deserve it over them. Michelle Williams, I would have to watch those movies before I say they do or not. But yeah, we need to get better. But I do think we've gotten better over the past couple years. There's still issues, but we got a long way to go. But we're taking the appropriate steps, I think.
So absolutely, Medea, I'm waiting to see
even if they're like little baby steps.
Next.
You know what? At this point, who knows? I think my dog.
So we'll go ahead and move on to the next topic. This one's more fun to talk about, so let's go ahead and get into it.
Is it Armie Hammer in the feet?
No.
Remember?
No. I did jokingly consider making that topic last week. For anyone who's curious, Armie Hammer did like a full expose article on how he was apparently sexually assaulted when he was younger. If that's true, I'm so sorry, but that doesn't make what you did any less fucking weird.
I was going to say, breaking news, man who sexually assaults people says he was sexually assaulted. Look, I mean, it's I feel bad for him at that time, but now whatever. It's like,
let's go ahead and jump into something that's more fun to talk about, which is Planet of the Apes. So again, to go back into my reporter voice for the write-up, this week we finally got the first details on the plot of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the fourth film in the 2010s rebooted series of Planet of the Apes, and the first entry of what, if it's successful, will be a new trilogy. This week, there were some casting announcements for the film, and as a part of the casting announcements, we had plot details revealed for the film. The setup for the film will see a major time jump, at which point multiple ape societies have spawned out from Caesar's original group. Humans that have survived the simian flu from the previous films have been reduced to a feral-like existence. Some of the ape groups have become so far removed from Caesar's ideals that the next generation of apes they are raising don't even know who he is, with some of them twisting his teachings in order to build empires. The film itself will focus on a young ape who comes from a group of apes who have begun enslaving other lesser groups of apes in order to use them to help dig for human technology in order to advance their society. The young ape escapes to freedom, and with the help of a young human woman whom he meets, it goes to search for better pastures. It is currently unknown who will play the protagonist of the film, but we do know that actor Owen Teague co-stars as Cornelius, the son of Caesar from the films. Teague takes over the role from Devin Dalton, who played the role in the previous entry, War for the Planet of the Apes. The film's cast also includes The Witcher's Freya Allen, Eka Darville, Peter Macon, Kevin Durand, Ditchin Luckman, if I said that correctly, and William H. Macy, and it releases next year on May 24th, 2024. So we'll start here before we get into the actual plot details. What are your guys' thoughts on the Apes trilogy as a whole? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Just what are the thoughts in general? Whoever wants to jump in on it.
I loved it. I thought it was amazing. Dawn is probably my favorite of the three, and then closely followed by War, and then Rise at the bottom. Even Rise is still a great movie, right? So like, not really a diss or anything like that. It's just how I rank them personally. Who did you say was directing
I'm in
this
agreement
one?
with you. That's how I would personally rank them.
Who did you say was directing this one?
So this one, the director of this one is not Matt Reeves. It is being directed by Wes Ball, who was the director of the Maze Runner trilogy.
Okay, I haven't seen any of those.
However, it should be said that it is the same writers from the previous films, and Reeves is still involved as a producer and personally picked Ball off of a pitch he gave for the films. So this wasn't just the studio handing it off. Reeves did have a hand in picking who his replacement was.
Is Circus doing anything with it? Like, I know he's not going to be in the movie, but is he like?
As far as I can find, no. With the exception of the continuing work with Weta Digital and their motion capture work that he would have helped establish, no, he's not personally involved.
Okay. All right. I'm excited, man. Like, even if you hadn't told me the plot, I'd be excited for a fourth one, just because I love the trilogy so much. But there's not really, like, even with the trilogy, the pitch, sorry, makes it kind of sound like he's almost like this Jesus character, where, like, over time people change the ideas to fit whatever they're doing for it, sort of thing. So I don't know. I'm psyched for it, man. I can't wait.
That was the first thing that stood out to me is, yeah, they're sort of turning Caesar into this, like, at least the ape society, he is sort of the Christ-like figure of this group, which I think is an interesting, I mean, I guess it was sort of there in the previous films because he was like
it
the leader of the revolution. They all looked this certainly
like he was this big, like, change, and I mean, and he was the first one who could speak and do all these other things, but they looked at Caesar as like this almost. It was the rest of the apes, and then there was Caesar above him in some way, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it fits in terms of continuation, and then if Cornelius is still around, that means it's not that much further down like a timeline. It's only like maybe what something.
Yeah, the article seemed to indicate that
I'm excited to see what they do with it.
It might be maybe like a couple decades difference because it has to be far enough that there's a next generation like fully intact, but also recent enough that, yeah, like his son would still be alive and a part of it. Jake, Matt, Tyler, I'll jump to one of you guys. What are your guys' thoughts on the Apes films overall, and what are your thoughts on the fourth film and what's coming?
Yeah, I also love the trilogy. When they first announced Rise, I remember thinking, well, this is stupid. This is dumb. Why are we going back to the Planet of the Apes? And then, of course, the movie came out, really, really good. And then Dawn came out, which I thought was fantastic. And then you had War come out, which not quite as good as Dawn, but still really, really good movie. And I like Wes Ball, too. I like what he did with the Maze Runner movies. The second Maze Runner is not really that great, in my opinion, but the third one's really good. And I was surprised with the first one as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. Until these movies start to stink again, I'm going to be pretty excited for more of these movies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about it too. I love the trilogy that they just finished. The story that they told, the way that they focused on the apes, and the humans became the secondary characters. I always found that really interesting, and just kind of like the world that they started building. I think what excites me the most about this is that the world that they just built throughout that trilogy was it was so well fleshed out, but at the same time, it was so small because it was just the one group of Caesar's apes. So I'm really excited because when Bad Ape showed up in war, it started implying that there were these other apes that were going to be in different societies, and I've always wondered, what exactly like what we said Planet of the Apes, but we've always been in like one group for every movie. So I'm excited to see the potential of them going to different tribes of apes and seeing how they're different. And obviously, it sounds like some of them are really different since they're enslaving other apes. Um, but I'm really excited about just kind of seeing how they continue this planet and how they keep building it. And we're kind of getting more into like the territory of what we've seen in like the original film, which we haven't really seen captured again because we did those two with Beneath being okay, and then we went back in time and then forward. So I'm really intrigued to see what exactly they do, and I'm excited about some of the people that they have involved. I mean, Kevin Durant's a great character actor, so I'm excited to see what he
Yep.
brings to it. I really like the Maze
Yeah.
Runner trilogy, so I'm excited to see the direction that West Ball brings to it.
Yeah, I've always said that with the Maze Runner films, when it comes to like that young adult territory of those adaptations, I don't think any one of the Maze Runner films is the best of that genre, but I think as a franchise, it's the most consistent of them. Because I feel like if you look at the Hunger Games, for example, as an easy comparison, the highest high of the Hunger Games is far higher than the best Maze Runner film, but I don't think any of the Maze Runner films dips below a certain level of quality, whereas the worst Hunger Games film, you can almost argue, is a bad movie by the time you reach the end of it. And I feel like that a lot of that credit goes to Ball as the director, and again, for what it's worth, when Ball directed that franchise, he jumped into a trilogy as a debuting director. He had never made a full-length film before he made the first one. So for that to be your first film working on a bigger budget, an adaptation, all that goes into it, I think he did a really, really solid job. And I've always liked that he was the choice to take over because I think that at this point he understands how to work on big films like this. But I think that he has a different style to Matt Reeves, and I think that could sort of bring something new to the films and sort of refresh it a little bit. Because for me, at least, I do think part of what War suffers from just a little bit is it very much feels like it's trying to go for the exact same strike of dramatic and action that Dawn did, but it almost tried to go more dramatic because it felt like it had to be an evolution. And I say that as someone who loves that movie, but it's like one of the few criticisms I have of it. Um, and I think Tyler, you have a good point there. Like some of the supporting cast that they've brought in, like Kevin Durant, William Macy, they're not going for these like the biggest names, but they're going for good actors. And I think sort of like you mentioned Bad Ape, like Steve Zahn's performance as Bad Ape. Steve Zahn is not a flashy name that you would jump to be like a lead in your film, but he did a great job in that movie. And I think that's sort of what this casting is continuing to do. Jake, I'll go down to you. You're the only one who hasn't had a chance to speak yet. What are your thoughts on the Apes films and the fourth one going forward?
Oh man, I love the shit out of this trilogy as well. No, I'm just joking. It's movie Battleground. I'm legally obligated to bullshit a bit. I haven't actually seen any of them. But that said, William H. Macy is a dope actor, so I'm good with that. And I will probably get to this franchise at some point, as it is in some geek realms.
Yeah, absolutely, and they are they're great films. I think as a completed trilogy, I think it really, really works. And I was really apprehensive when they were first like, oh yeah, we're gonna make a fourth one. But the more I hear about it, the more excited I am because I do think the director was a good choice. I like that it is the same writing team from the others because I think they did a good job with the script. I like that it's the way that they're evolving it, and yeah, like the idea that apes evolve to the point where they start enslaving other apes. Like it feels like now we're reaching the point where the franchise is starting to almost become a reflection of real human evolution. And if they can nail what they're going for, what I think they're trying to go for with that, it could go really, really well. But also, the riskier you get, the further it could fall flat.
Mhm.
So I guess the hope is that they just continue with it. Does anyone else have any thoughts on it before we move on, or any final thoughts on the Apes films in general, the fourth film?
Mark Wahlberg's not in this one.
No.
Mark Wahlberg is
Okay.
not in this one, thankfully. And I
Good.
feel
I'm
like
down.
any film that feels like it might be going for a race allegory, Mark Wahlberg should not be in, given his history.
That's a good point.
All I have to say real quick is just I think what's going to be really important about this movie is how much people can detach it from War and Dawn. I know those were really excellent films, so we want to like keep on be like comparing the two. But I feel like this is going to be an evolution of the Apes franchise, so we need to go into it with an open mind. Remember that like those the characters and everything that we saw in those films and we ended up loving are important and they do influence the story. But at the end of the day, this is going to be a completely brand new thing, so we need to try to approach it like it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I think that's a great point, because it's the same franchise, but every time that like somebody from the studio has spoken about it, they're like quick to stress like it's a new trilogy that continues what was done previously. And I think that that's a great point in like it is going to be something new. It is a new creative head. It is a new vision. We're moving on from Caesar and Circus, and so some things are going to change, and an open mind is perfect. I'm going to use a comment here that was thrown in by Chris Diaz as a weird comparison point, but he brings up the Fast 10 trailer, which I did not put in the show notes, because does Hollywood not understand the concept of a Super Bowl trailer is you're supposed to air it at the fucking Super Bowl? Have we lost that concept of like releasing trailers on the Super Bowl, but playing them beforehand? I have not seen any trailer that's labeled Super Bowl. I have not watched. If I'm going to watch it, I might as well watch it when it airs. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like that is just dumb. But the Fast and Furious franchise is a great example to compare it to, because it is a franchise that has distinct points where you can look at it and say, okay, this has now evolved into something new. And I feel like obviously I'm hoping Apes is a smarter version of this in terms of evolution, because I don't want apes to go to space. But in terms of looking at it from the perspective of like a franchise starts as one thing and it will continue to evolve and become something else with new creative figures, the Fast and Furious franchise is a great example of that. And I think people have always been very open-minded to what it transformed into up until they went to space. And then we all copped the fuck on and went, what are you doing here? But I hope people do give the Apes franchise that same leeway. I think you have a great point there. All right. So any last thoughts, or are we good to move on?
No.
All right. Let's continue talking about franchises, because Disney is franchising the fuck out of themselves. This week, at a Walt Disney Company earnings call, Walt Disney Studios CEO Bob Iger confirmed that in the immediate future, Disney will be working on sequels to previous films in addition to original works. Iger reconfirmed the previous announcement that Pixar is working on Inside Out 2, which is set on the slate for a 2024 release. He also announced that Toy Story 5, the sixth total entry in the Toy Story franchise following last year's Lightyear, was in development for Pixar. As for Disney Animation Studios, Frozen 3 and Zootopia 2 are both in active development, and it is worth noting that with the release of Frozen 3, that would see the first time that a Disney animated film has had a properly completed trilogy, as previous other animated films like Aladdin, Cinderella, and The Lion King that did get trilogies were sequels completed by secondary studios. Zootopia 2 serves as the follow-up to the billion-dollar grossing original that was released in 2016, and by the time the film hits what was estimated to be its release date, it could be over 10 years since the original was released. This announcement comes as a shock to a lot of people, but if you've been paying attention to the company, it's really not a shock at all, following a series of box office disappointments. Between Disney and Pixar, there have been 5 total original animated films sent to theaters that have underperformed since the year 2020, those being Onward, Raya and the Last Dragon, Encanto, Lightyear, and Strange Worlds, all of which either grossly underperformed in their profit or lost the studio money. The last original films to turn a profit for the studios were Moana and Coco, released in 2016 and 2017 respectively. However, in the time in between, Disney released multiple sequels to films, including 3 sequels that each grossed $1 billion, those being Toy Story 4, Frozen 2, and The Incredibles 2. So there's 2 frames of mind here to look at this, and I'll throw it to whoever wants to pick it up first. There's the monetary aspect of this makes total fucking sense that they're making sequels to films that made money. But then there's the creative aspect of do some of these need sequels again? And so whoever wants to pick it up first to talk about, whoever picks it up first, we'll talk about that film first. So which one should we dive into?
Let's start off with Zootopia. So I think this makes sense, like the most sense out of all of it, because for one, with that world, you can do a lot in that world, so it makes sense to do a sequel. Plus, it made $1 billion. Like, why did it take this long for Disney to say, yeah, let's do a sequel? They did that one like short show or whatever. Like,
oh yeah, Zootopia Plus.
Yeah, like yippee, right? But like this, kind of like Moana, this is a movie I think that out of all the Disney animated movies that came out like in the past 10 years, this makes most sense, I think, to get a sequel to me. Just the world that you have in there, and then also the fact that it's a big money maker. Like, why? And it plus it's a really good movie. Why did it not get a sequel 10 years ago?
Well, they couldn't have made a sequel 10 years ago because the movie hadn't come out yet 10 years ago.
Let me
understand your point.
The point is it should have happened.
So, no, I totally understand your point.
50 years ago.
So we'll start with Zootopia then. I'll go to Tyler next. What are your thoughts on the Zootopia sequel finally happening?
I'm really excited about it. I've literally just watched Zootopia a couple weeks ago, and I just was reminded about how fantastic of a film it is. They did so much work laying the groundwork for what that world is, and so it seemed like a real shame that it was the only one we were going to get, because I don't even think we got to see all the districts in Zootopia itself, let alone see more of the outside world. So, I mean, and I love the cast, so I'm definitely excited to kind of get to see, Nick Wilde again and Judy Hopps and see what they've been up to. So I'm totally for it.
Yeah, Medee, Jake.
I'm waiting for the moment where the sloth is still walking to get food in the jail or something. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with it, but Matt's right. Like, this movie should have come out 35 years ago. Like,
yes,
it's time doesn't matter. This should have been greenlit. As soon as it hit like 600 million, they're like, yeah, Zootopia 2 coming out soon. Like, it's such a no-brain like idea that it's astounding that they haven't done it yet. And then Zootopia Plus on Disney Plus. Sure, yeah, we got this much content after like 9 years of waiting for something. They should have done this a while ago.
This is
and the fact
totally
that it's only just starting now is like, all right, finally, let's go. And then just greenlight 3 as well already. Like, just get it done. Just start filming it, recording it, doing everything you need to do. Just start doing it now and then get this process over with sooner rather than later.
That's fair. This is a completely separate side note, but the Disney Plus shit that they've been doing with their sequel, like their animated films, all of it has been incredibly disappointing because they announced all these shows like years ago that they were going to be making, and the only one that's actually a real show is The Monsters at Work, the sequel to Monsters Inc., which, to be fair, if you have not checked it out, it is actually a decent show, which I believe it's now airing on Disney Channel, so even if you're not a subscriber to Disney Plus, you can actually check it out. They've aired it on television since. I'm sure it's in reruns at like 4 a.m, but other than that, none of these have been real shows. Like Zootopia Plus was this weird short form parody series, and like the Doug's Days, the Up sequel, those shorts. Baymax was a disappointment in being just these shorts of Baymax being a hospital robot. Like, none of these have lived up to what they could have actually been if they had just made real shows. And I think that that's incredibly disappointing.
For me, so the Up stuff, I'm fine with that. I don't think Up needs a sequel. I don't think we need to see any more of that world. If they want to do shorts, then go ahead, do it. But it didn't really feel like something that really needed a continuation anyway. So I'm fine with like the shorts, just like they did with like Toy Story, where they release all those shorts. Like, I'm fine if they do stuff like that. I just don't really think that needed a sequel. But, Big Hero 6, at least give it a show, like a proper show.
Give it a proper show.
Because I think they did
Um,
something, but it was just some like throwaway thing.
And for what it's worth, because I just looked it up out of sheer curiosity, and I'll throw it over to you next, Jake, after I bring this up. So I think you guys are 100% correct about the Zootopia point of how did this not get a sequel sooner. Zootopia is the third highest grossing Disney film of all time, which I didn't realize until I put this article together that it made $1 billion. It's third only behind Frozen and Frozen 2, which is insane to me that movie made that much money and they haven't touched it at all in the years since. But Jake, I'll throw it to you. What are your thoughts on Zootopia 2?
Yeah, I've got to echo pretty much what everyone's saying. I also had no idea it was that financially successful. It was a first-time watch for me in January, actually, so I'm new to the train, but I adore the crap out of those characters, and I'm definitely excited to kick it with them again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Tyler, you brought it up. You had a great point. It's not just that it's a good movie, it's that it builds out a world that you can actually go back to, which I think so few of the films do. And unfortunately, I think probably the one that did it best sense was Raya, and that movie failed, so it's not getting a sequel. But at least we can go back to something like Zootopia and sort of get into that as well. So I'll throw out, because Chris put in a comment here, and I think he actually makes a good point. We'll go to Toy Story 5 next. What else can you grab from this? And he has a great point. Where else is there to go with Toy Story aside from whatever the fuck you can force out in order to try and make another $1 billion? Like, where can you actually go with this movie? Does anyone have any ideas they want to throw to Disney for free right now?
I actually saw something interesting.
What'd you say?
Are they sticking with Woody or with Buzz?
They haven't released any details outside of it's happening.
Here's what they need to do. So they need to put out a 10, 15-minute short, something like that. That's between Toy Story 4 and 5. Do it like Book of Boba Fett, to where Buzz, he goes to the Rare City, and you have Woody. He's training with Bo Peep about whatever, just like maybe how to be more qualified to take care of himself on his own and whatnot. And he has to make the choice, either finish his training or go back with Buzz Lightyear. Just do it like Book of Boba Fett style, where like, hey, you want to know how Baby Yoda got back with Mando? Here you go. Here's an episode. Just do that.
And
do that, because I have no idea. What's the point of watching a Toy Story movie with just Woody, Bo, and the others, or just like Buzz Lightyear and those gangs? Look, I love Buzz and all of them. Nobody cares. That's not why you go to the movie. You go to the movie for Tim Allen and Tom Hanks together. And look, Tim Allen, he put something out, so it sounds like he's going to be in the movie. So are we not going to have Woody anymore? Like, is this going to be another movie where one of the toys goes off with somebody else and they just separate from the group? Is it? Are we going to do something similar?
This is going to be the Bullseye story. We're going to follow.
Yeah, that's how Bullseye. That's what it's going to be about in Bullseye. Or you're going to have Jesse's going to go off with I think it's Andy's mom, right? That got rid of Jesse in Toy Story 2. I think wasn't that like a rumor, or it actually happened where she was the kid that left Jesse? I don't know. If it's not idea. Andy's mom, maybe the girl that left Jesse and all of them, she goes and gets Jesse back. That's the plot. And then we'll do Toy Story 6 where Rex, it's his story now. What's the point of these movies? Like, this is why they announced this movie. $1 billion. Toy Story 3 made $1 billion, I believe. Toy Story 4 made $1 billion. Disney Plus lost 2.4 million people. So guess what? Let's do another Toy Story movie, because that's what everybody wanted. No, let's not do Big Hero 6. No, let's not do Moana. Let's do some like shit Moana TV show that hasn't came out yet. Do some like shorts of Baymax. Oh, let me help heal you. There's that. Let's do that. But we're gonna, let's not do those things. Let's not do literally anything else that hasn't gotten a sequel. Let's do Toy Story 5, because why not? What's the point?
Well, because money.
Like, is it going to be some is it going to be some flashback that happens where Woody just stumbles upon the house again, wherever they're at, and that's how? Oh, I can't wait to watch a movie about Forky. Whoa, that's so exciting. Like, what's the point?
Tony Hill did a great job.
Stupid.
Don't make fun of Forky, okay?
Look, I
He was
love
a good
Forky.
addition.
Yeah, he's trash, like me. As he says, he's trash.
Okay,
Why?
so Matt's
This is
clearly on
stupid.
board with this. Can anybody else justify a Toy Story 5 aside from the financial?
Okay, so personally, I don't really see why they're doing it. Personally, I don't see the point of them doing this. I think it's a mistake. But I did see something that was interesting. I think it was on Twitter about what the story could be. And not that I buy into pretty much any story at this point. But it was semi interesting. They're going to do a time skip to where Bonnie is now like in high school, and she's going to find Andy again and return his toys for his kids. And then when his kids, and then Andy's gonna be like, "Oh, well, where's Woody?" And then Buzz and all of them are gonna have to go and find Woody so they can bring him back for the next generation of for Andy's children. I was like, that's semi interesting. I mean, I still don't think it's enough, but I was like, at least there's like some kind of story that I was like, I can see it.
The cynic writer in my head goes, "Oh, so Toy Story 5's plot is to discredit Toy Story 4."
Right. It's the Rise of Skywalker. That's what it is. No,
no. Stop
or it
comparing
disregards
Toy Story to
the last
shitty Star Wars products.
No, this is actually what it's going to be about. So, Bonnie is going to be
good Star Wars product.
Right. Bonnie's going to be 18, 19, whatever, and they're going to kind of take inspiration from Leonardo DiCaprio, where Andy is going to actually get with Bonnie when Andy's like 40-something years old and Bonnie's like 18, 19 years old. And that's how it happens.
So it's a film about legal barriers and consent. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. It's okay, guys.
I think
go ahead,
you just combine 50 Shades of Grey and Toy Story, and it's all the sex toys come to life when no one's in the room. That's the only other option.
This is essentially
it's gonna be Christian Grey and then that old woman or whatever that he used to be with. That's what it's gonna be.
What's up?
But why the fuck are we doing this?
Or let's make this weirder. Andy gets with an older woman and she's got grandkids, so we got to bring the toys back. I'm sorry, that's horrible.
Here's the movie. So this is what it's gonna be. It's gonna be inspired by Taken, where Woody is kidnapped by like these foreign human trafficking people, but instead of human trafficking, it's like toy trafficking, and Buzz and the gang have to go and save Woody.
I mean, that was just two, basically.
Yeah, that was kind of
I guess that's true,
wasn't it?
I guess
that's the other one where you're like, "Oh, we have to give it back to Andy." I was like,
"It's different. It's kind of Buzz. Very different. Buzz is the one that got caught now. It's very, very different."
Yeah. Andy goes up to Bonnie, getting ready to hand the toys to him, and goes, "Hey, you're under 25."
Well, see, the problem is if we go with that plot, the movie is Buzz gets kidnapped. So Toy Story 5 is the toys journeying to find Woody, so we can cliffhang and set up Toy Story 6, where they then go find Buzz.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
Then Thanos shows up.
Toy Story 5 Part 1. I like it.
Trilogy.
What does God need with a toy spaceship?
It's going to be Toy Story to Deathly Hallows Part 1.
In? Oh, Lord.
But you know what this means.
They could have decent Toy Story villain. He fits.
You know what this means, right? We're going to get Toy Story 6. They're going to have two trilogies. They're going to.
I'm waiting for like the Star Wars toys to show up in Toy Story.
Yeah,
so they can just
the Marvel and Star Wars.
Start doing IP toys, just like
like Robert Downey Jr. comes in for a voice of the Iron Man toy.
There you go.
And
then you have Dom Toretto for some reason gets involved.
Okay, so let's move on. Who wants to hop on the next one? We have Frozen 3 and Inside Out 4 or Inside Out 2. Sorry, who wants to go? We skipped a couple sequels.
Inside Out 2 actually makes sense.
Frozen 3 or Inside Out 2? Go ahead, Mitty.
Like of the two of them, Inside Out 2 makes more sense. Like Frozen, man, I'm so sick of Frozen. I swear to God. But like Inside Out 2 actually makes sense because there's a lot of people who really enjoy the movie. Stop this. There's a lot of people who enjoy Inside Out, and then like the ending that they had of like, all right, she's starting to hit puberty, and how does that change the body, and how did the everything like change with that. I'd love to see what Pixar's take on that is, because that's
Yeah.
something that it's aging with the audience too. Like it's one of those things, like kind of similar to how Toy Story did for a while. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, all the kids who watched Inside Out have now gone through puberty or are going through puberty, and now they get to see, oh, this is why my body's doing this, because that's just how this shit works.
And I was gonna say, like, for when they did that ending on Inside Out, for years I was like, because Inside Out is my personal favorite film from Pixar. I love that movie. I never thought they'd do a sequel because they did the cliffhanger of like puberty. I always figured it was just a joke. They're never gonna touch it.
Yeah.
But with Turning Red being as close an allegory to like female puberty as you're going to get, that actually makes me more interested, because it shows A, they can do this in a tasteful and respectful way if they go about it the right way, and B, they're not scared to go there anymore, which means you can properly do a sequel and actually follow it up the correct way. So that does make me the only thing that deflates me is because he's now busy running the studio, it's not Pete Docter directing it. And I've gone on record before, I think that Pete Docter is easily the best director within Pixar. For anyone who doesn't know, the 4 films that he's directed are Monsters, Inc., Up, Inside Out, and Soul. And I think that that foursome as a director is probably the best work that anyone at Pixar has done individually. So the fact that he's not directing it is a little bit of a concern, and it is somebody newer, which is per what Pixar has been doing by bringing in a new round of directors. But he's still at the studio. It's not like he's left, so I do have hope for it in that sense. Tyler, Jake, what are your guys' thoughts?
I'll just hop on with you because I was also going to bring up the Turning Red aspect, and I think that's a good point. And if they do it in a similar fashion, it should be fantastic. Inside Out is actually the only of Doctor's films I haven't caught yet. But yeah, I definitely love all of his flicks, so I expect it to be good when I do get there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is one that makes sense to do too, just based on like what you can do with the kid in the movie, because she's going to be going through puberty and she's going to be going through all those changes that you will normally go through as a teenager. Now, they better not do what they did with Turning Red, because God forbid people on a certain side, they'll start freaking out about that. Like I saw on Facebook, they'll start throwing out weird names, for people like, yeah, I like the movie. But again, this is kind of like Zootopia, where it does make sense to do another Inside Out. Like I said, you could do a lot just with, how somebody develops from being a child to a teenager. And then they could do a third one where she develops into becoming an adult, and you can go into that. Like, there's a lot you can do.
Oh,
well,
see, I was going to say for the third one, let's do a time skip and go to menopause.
Yeah, we'll go to where she's like 75 years old, where like all the... like the happiness and sad, and they all just start dying.
Who do you know that's hung on that long?
Oh
what do you think menopause starts, man? Menopause.
No, I'm not.
You're talking about like dementia, right?
I'm talking dementia. I'm just saying, let's skip to like 75 years old. Let's see, like, joy and sadness.
That's Inside Out 5.
Start dying. No, that's 3.
No,
we're gonna skip.
You're jumping ahead.
No. Matt, you gotta go in order, okay? It's menopause, midlife crisis, dementia.
We're all neglecting pregnancy. Do not neglect pregnancy.
And then death. And then we'll get death, where they all just start dying off.
Yeah.
Who's gonna be the last one?
That was a happy fucking thought. Tyler, what are your thoughts on Inside
Out? I mean, I love Inside Out. It's definitely one of the best Pixar movies, and it was the biggest surprise. I know we're talking a lot about them doing puberty next. The only thing is that I know Pixar isn't really keen on revisiting topics that they've already done.
True.
So with Turning Red, have already come out. That was about puberty. I could still see them doing that because it's still from a different angle, but it seems unlikely with the amount of time that it's been since. I mean, the first film came out in 2015. Right. When by the time it comes out, I mean, that'll be like 10 or 11 years after the first one came out. I could see them doing an angle more about like her leaving home and how that impacts her, and like after she graduates high school and she's going to college or something like that, and seeing like how that impacts her emotionally, leaving that family unit and everything that she's built, and like how complex her emotions are and everything. Just kind of seeing how she reacts more to that, and it will kind of mirror what we saw in Inside Out, where she did lose that friend and family unit. We get to see it from an angle of her leaving her home, choosing to leave her home to go and move on to this new adventure, and how that would impact her.
No, that's actually a great point. You're right, because they haven't said what they're going to do for the story. And I hadn't thought about that. You're right. Maybe because they've already done puberty, they decided to skip it. And realistically, with emotions, you can pick any point in someone's life that is a major seminal point and focus on the emotional state of what's going on. As funny as our franchise idea is of going from puberty to menopause to whatever, realistically, like you could pick any seminal moment in someone's life and like focus on the emotional state of that. The other thing with Inside Out, and this is the only other concern I have, unless there's a workaround for it, is there's been some concern as to who is returning to the voice cast. They have confirmed, the only person who was confirmed when they announced it was Amy Poehler. They said, starring Amy Poehler, so she'll be back. But Mindy Kaling, who voiced Disgust, has already said that she has not had any contact with Pixar, and as far as she's aware, she is not coming back for the sequel. Now, you could argue that maybe the angle is because the character is aged from where she previously was. Maybe there's the chance that one or two different emotions are running the head instead of the ones that were there when you're a child. Because I feel like if I were to put it down to brass tacks, like I feel like disgust is something you feel more as a child. I feel like maybe there's a more refined emotion the older you get and the more that you're in tune with your emotions. But is that a potential concern for anybody else if some of the voice casts don't return and they have to start replacing people?
Not really. All that I care about is get the right writers for the movie, get somebody that can do a good job directing.
And I should say, it
sucks,
is the
but
same writer. Meg Lethove, who wrote the first one, is returning to write the film.
Yeah, and to me that's one of the things that matters as well. Like if you have a good story, if you have a good writing team, a good director, at that point, it's going to suck not to have everybody back for the voices, but I mean, as long as you have a good story and a good, director and writer, that's really what matters. And you got to have good actors too. You don't want to have like Tommy Wiseau play like Anger. Actually, you do. Give me him as
Actually, I kind of well, if Lewis Black wasn't perfect for Anger, I'd say yeah. Let's get Tommy a different. Okay, let's make Tommy this film's Bing Bong, but instead of being a magical creature, it's just Tommy Wiseau animated.
And Tommy Wiseau is Indifference.
I did not hit her. No, I did not.
Take it to the moon for me.
Oh no! Don't ruin Bing Bong for me, man. Don't ruin Bing Bong. All right, so that's Inside. Okay, so the consensus that we're at so far is Utopia 2, we're excited about. Inside Out 2, we're excited about. Toy Story 5, aside from the money it's going to make. I mean, look, most of us are probably going to see it anyways, but nobody really cares. Anyone care about Frozen 3?
I don't know. I guess how much more they put Elsa through. Like, she's going to become the Avatar at this point. Like,
look, I haven't seen Frozen 2.
Disney has two different franchises that are mimicking Avatar: The Last Airbender. Because I mean, arguably, Avatar is also mimicking Avatar: The Last Airbender at this point.
Yeah. At this point, the Fire Nation's going to attack, and Elsa's going to be the only one who can stop them, or something. I don't know.
Now, look, I haven't seen Frozen 2, so I can't tell you if I think this is, worth doing or not. But I mean, it makes sense to make it a trilogy. You did 2. They make money. Just get one more in there, move on, and make something new. I'll probably end up watching a second one, sometime soon.
My hope is if we do a third one, Disney, and I'm talking to you, Disney, push the right film or the right song. I mean, because you pushed the wrong song with Frozen 2. Okay, Into the Unknown is fine, but the other one at the end where it's her and Evan Rachel Wood. That is the much better song. And instead, I was forced to listen to Discount Let It Go for the next 6 months instead of a good song. That or make Jonathan Groff do another 80s rock song, because that was pretty good. The power ballad was great.
I can hear you.
There's an 80s power ballad in Frozen 2.
Nice.
It is worth checking out just for that.
That's the
I'll be watching it.
Anyone care about Frozen 3? Anyone else?
Frozen was another first time watch for me in January. I am doing some catch up on Disney that I've kind of missed over the years. I have not caught 2 yet, but I dig Groff as a singer, and I also am a fan of Evan Rachel Wood as a singer, so I can see where that would have sucked for you. But yeah, like you said, it prints money. I'm fine with Disney doing the Billy Strut, and I enjoy the first one, so should be cool.
Yeah, like for what it's worth, they're both decent films. I don't think either of them are like horrible. They're just not top tier Disney films.
They're like baseline good Disney films or the first one is just like a baseline Disney.
Frozen feels like the obligation of, well, we need to do something with a princess, so
yeah,
let's do another Frozen movie.
Right.
All right. So before we move on, any more thoughts on Disney sequels? This was a question I thought of to throw out before we move on. Is there a Disney film that never got a sequel that you think should?
Big Hero 6.
Yeah, Big Hero 6 and Moana we've already discussed, and I agree with.
Yeah,
like
Big Hero 6 should.
I think Bambi. I'd like to see what happened after Bambi's mom died.
Hey, we are getting a new Bambi movie. Not from Disney. It's from the people that brought us Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Yeah, we're getting a vicious killing machine with Bambi. That I'm excited for. But yeah, Moana, Big Hero 6 makes a lot of sense to do. I mean, especially with superhero movies being as big as they are. Well, that's another one. I mean, I'm pretty sure it did pretty well at the box office. Now, granted, it did come out when 50 Shades of Grey came out, so that probably did affect the box office for the moms.
For anyone who's curious, no, Big Hero 6 came out when Interstellar came out.
I swear I saw a double feature of Big Hero 6 and 50 Shades, unless it's something else. I swear I saw.
So for what it's worth, well, I have the release date in front of me. That's why I can say that. So for what it's worth, aside from the $3 billion films that Disney has, if we're looking at their top 5, The Lion King is next, fourth at $968 million, and then there is a drop off. But next is Big Hero 6 at $657, and then Moana at $643 million. So you guys are preaching to the choir here. They're the ones that made Disney money, so really they should go back.
Yeah, so you're right.
I also think Wreck-It Ralph 3 I'd be down for. Like if we're gonna
I love those flicks.
That's what it was.
Like if we're gonna complete trilogies, let's do Wreck-It Ralph 3 as well. Those movies are good.
Yeah, I adored Ralph Breaks the Internet.
I have to shout out, and I make this joke with all love. Chris, with the exception of Big Hero 6, you need to pick films that succeeded. We're not.
Right.
Treasure
Planet would be a cool one.
I love the optimism, but we're not getting a Great Mouse Detective sequel at this point.
Yeah. Look, Treasure Planet would be really cool to get a sequel, but it didn't do well at the box office. That's one that I think should get a sequel, but it makes sense why we haven't gotten a sequel.
If Pixar ever does a Luca 2, I want them to go all in on the subtle gay romance they put in the first one. Let's really go for it.
Yeah, just go all the way. Let's make them adults. Let's do that, because I don't really want to watch a Disney animated movie about 2 kids doing stuff. Let's let them grow a little older. That way, people that are not kids don't feel uncomfortable. But no, Treasure Planet would have been cool.
I always called Luca. I always jokingly back on After Dark. I jokingly called Luca "Call Me by Your Pixar" multiple times, and I'm just saying that sequel writes itself.
Now Chris did bring up a good point. A proper sequel to Monsters Inc. That's one I think would make sense to do more Monsters.
If I didn't, I'd agree with him if I didn't enjoy the show, because the show is a sequel to Monsters Inc. Mike and Sully aren't the leads, but they're in it enough that it counts as a sequel.
Right. I know. I would like to see that back on the big screen, though. Like not a
No, that's
prequel,
true.
but like an actual sequel. That's what I would like to see. That's what they should have done anyway. Even though I did like Monsters University, it honestly should have been like a true sequel from the get-go. I think that it would have done better if that was the case.
I agree with you, but the only reason I'd say I'm against it is because I've heard Pixar's reasoning for why they never made a sequel to Monsters Inc. and I get where they're coming from. Because again, to fill it in for anyone who doesn't know, according at least to Pete Docter himself, the reason they never made a sequel to Monsters Inc. is because based on the way Pixar operate, they wait a customary 10 years before making a sequel to something. And by the time they got around to deciding they were going to make a sequel, they felt that it had been so long since the first one that people in their heads had built up what the relationship between Sully and oh my god, what is the kid's name?
Boo.
Boo, thank you. What Sully's and Boo's relationship would be following the film. And apparently they did try to come up with a plot for a sequel, but they felt like whatever they could come up with wouldn't match up to what people had in their heads. And so they just felt it better not to try and go there. And even then, with them making the show now for Disney Plus, it is an immediate sequel. Like I think the show picks up in the first episode like the day after the movie ends. And they've said as much outside of the show that there's a time jump between when the plot of the Monsters Inc. movie ends and then the ending with the door, and this show takes place in between then. So at least as of now, they never plan to address the Boo thing within the context of the show.
Right. Well, one, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen whether the prequel, TV show, shorts, whatever for is Ratatouille. I'm surprised we haven't seen something else from that.
Good pull.
That's one I think that you could dive into, and
we got a Disney ride 15 years late. But other than
that's like the one. But there's I'm trying to figure it out. But somebody I saw on TikTok had a really cool idea of like actually combining everything together. I'll figure out the name. I'll kind of explain it.
Is this like that Pixar theory thing where like everything takes place in the same universe?
No, it would kind of dive into that because it would be going to, I guess, the different worlds. But it's like the pizza truck, it's always in the Pixar movies. That somebody came up with the idea of, well, that's a and they actually sent it to some people at Pixar and they're like, yeah, this is actually kind of cool. Where it's I think it would have been Boo. She kind of drives in, kind of goes to all these different things. I would have to find it to describe it better for you, but
Boo,
I knew
Forrest Gump.
So Boo explores the multiverse. Are we just
I'll find it. I'll tell you guys what it is if I can find it later. It's actually a pretty cool.
Pixar
got it and said they actually liked the idea. Like they
hold on though. So you're telling me the plot of this theoretical film is presumably a now at least grown-up Asian girl explores the infinite multiverse. This is just everything everywhere all at once again.
Not exactly. I'll explain it in a little bit.
But with Pixar universe instead of hot dog figures.
I'll figure it. I'll find it in a minute.
What were you saying, Medivh? My bad.
It's different than everything everywhere all at once because Owen Wilson shows up as a car, and he doesn't do that.
Yes,
that could have happened in Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I wouldn't have questioned it. We did technically get Ratatouille in that film as well, but with a raccoon.
Raccoon. God, I love Everything Everywhere.
Elemental movie next. So,
what'd you say?
I said that the Pet Rocks and Pixar's doing that Elemental movie next. So there you go.
We're going to tie it all in together. All right. So, Matt, while Matt's looking that up, we'll come back to it. I'm going to go ahead and move on. I guess we're technically moving on to something that's a bit heavier, but we'll come back to the fun stuff whenever Matt finds this TikTok. Between this week and last week, Lionsgate announced that they were moving forward with a biopic centered on the late king of pop, Michael Jackson. They also announced that Jackson's real-life nephew, Jafar Jackson, has been cast in the titular role following multiple rounds of auditions. While many people responded positively to seeing Jackson get a biopic, especially following a series of successful music biopics over the previous years and the cancellation recently of the Madonna biopic, not everyone is on board. People have spoken out against Jackson, people who have spoken out against Jackson based on his previous allegations of child molestation are publicly upset at the film's existence and the lack of outcry for it. Specifically, Dan Reed, the director of the HBO documentary Leaving Neverland from a few years ago, published an editorial in The Guardian this week saying, quote, "What the total absence of outrage accompanying the announcement of this movie tells us is that Jackson's seduction is still a living force, operating from beyond the grave. It seems that the press, his fans, and the vast older demographic who grew up loving Jackson are willing to set aside his unhealthy relationship with children and just go along with the music. To them, I say this: even if you do not believe a word of what his many accusers have said, even if you are not concerned by the police investigations and the massive payouts to halt legal proceedings, how do you explain the completely uncontested fact that for years Jackson spent innumerable nights alone in bed with young boys? What was he doing with them, alone in his Neverland bedroom with alarm bells in the corridor? That cannot be acceptable by any measure. Despite anyone's personal feelings, the film will more than likely move ahead due to major financial gain potential for Lionsgate, one of smaller Hollywood studios. Major names are already involved in the project in addition to Jafar Jackson. The film is being produced by Bohemian Rhapsody producer Graham King, written by The Aviator and Skyfall screenwriter John Logan, and is directed by Training Day director Antoine Fuqua. Michael Jackson's estate is involved in producing the film. It is set for a 2024 release. So obviously less fun than Disney, but this is something that is moving forward, and of course there is a lot to be said about it depending on where you fall on the Michael Jackson side of things. So I'll go ahead and throw it out again. Whoever wants to pick this up first, go ahead. What are your thoughts on the idea of the film being made in the first place and the comments from the director of the documentary?
The film makes sense to be made. Like you said, music biopics are like where it's at right now. So I'm fine with it. Obviously, the accusations are not cool. Or like the implications of the like accusations are not cool. Yeah, obviously you guys get where I'm coming from on that. That's no bueno. But if the movie does it, or like if that is part of the movie, then cool. Like as long as the movie doesn't skirt around it and completely ignore it, then I'm fine with it.
Which I think that is part of the concern because his estate is involved in the film. The thought is, and again, Bohemian Rhapsody producer Graham King, which King was not the reason that the film ended up the way it was. King was involved in the film when Sacha Baron Cohen was involved, and it was supposed to be like a more realistic expose on Freddie Mercury's life. He stayed attached because that film made fucking money. Why wouldn't you stay attached to it? But it was Queen that stopped it from going the direction that it was going. So there is a curious level here. What does anybody else have thoughts on the fact that this film is happening or anything surrounding it?
Look, I'll be honest. I don't know what happened. I don't know if what he was accused of was true or not with it. So I have to go into really this movie or really anything else, whether it's telling a story positively about him or negatively about him. I have to go into it and view the story as the story. Look, the documentary, that was a hard watch. You know, if what the documentary is true, then fuck them. If not, then fuck the people that made the documentary is kind of how I view it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know, whether, whose side is right. So for me personally, I'm just going to go into this movie as the movie. I am a little worried that it seems like Michael Jackson's like estate, family, all that are involved quite a bit because of, Bohemian Rhapsody, where Queen was involved a lot. That movie didn't turn out as great in my opinion. Now, it also could be like Rocket Man, where Elton John was involved pretty heavily. But Elton John was like, look, I'm not going to let you guys, be contained by certain things. Tell the story how it is. I'm not going to hold you back. So, I mean, it could be like a Rocket Man, but I am also worried that it could be like a Bohemian Rhapsody where, they were like, look, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, and wasn't able to tell the full true story. Obviously, this movie is not going to tell the full true story because there are probably certain things they want to tell that maybe they don't really dive into. And maybe they hold back on a few things. I'm going into it. I I need to see a trailer before I say whether I'm looking forward to this movie or not. I can understand why some people are like, this movie should not happen at all. But I can also understand why people are like, yeah, this should happen. And if, this movie, instead of telling it more in a positive light of Michael Jackson, would have been more in the negative light, I can understand people saying, no, this shouldn't happen because this, didn't happen at all. So again, you just got to go into it, just watch the movie for the movie and try your best to block out anything from the outside, because at the end of the day, we truly don't know whether the stuff he was accused of actually happened or not. So I'm curious. I'm surprised it took this long for a Michael Jackson movie, but also I'm not surprised because of all the controversy and stuff that's surrounded by the story. So,
to jump on it, I think the movie, and there was no politically correct way to say what I'm about to say, so I'm just going to go for it. I think the movie is going to avoid any of the more controversial stuff with Michael Jackson by simply not going near that area of his career. Mm-hmm. Because if anyone has looked up a picture of Jafar Jackson, he's black. Yeah. And it is a very well-known fact that after a certain point in his career, at least physically, obviously, Michael Jackson began appearing as white. And unless they are going to do some incredibly questionable makeup or VFX work, I don't think we can really go there. So to me, it seems as though this movie is probably, especially because Jafar Jackson's also 26, so he's very young. This movie to me screams that it's going to focus mostly on the early section of his career, probably moving from Jackson 5 into Thriller and then that type of era, of which there was a lot less of, excuse me, this behavior going on. In terms of if the movie should exist, so I'm going to make a comparison point, and very few people may understand what I'm comparing it to, but in the UK, for anyone who watches or pays attention to Premier League football or soccer that happens over there, there's a very similar, not very similar, I should say, but there's a court case going on over there for a player for the club Manchester United named Mason Greenwood. And essentially what happened is this player was accused of a sexual assault and battery on his girlfriend at the time. And so publicly, someone not connected to the case leaked footage and audio of what is, if it is true and unaltered, Mason Greenwood very clearly threatening and abusing and potentially raping his girlfriend. Yeah. Now, Greenwood has been cleared of charges, but he was never deemed innocent in the eyes of the law because the main accuser, his girlfriend, has since withdrawn the accusation and is now publicly back with him in a relationship. And there's a large question surrounding if he should be allowed back into the professional sport over there because, yes, his court case doesn't exist anymore, so legally in the eyes of the law, he was not deemed a criminal, but he was also never deemed innocent, and there's very public evidence that damns him. And so there's a debate over that, a morality debate. And I would consider that very similar to what happened with Michael Jackson, because at the end of the day, it's very clear and provable and publicly known that Michael Jackson spent time in bed with little boys, and that's just fucking weird no matter how you twist it.
Yeah.
Now, in a legal view, any of the cases that got far enough that they got to court and they reviewed footage and they actually made a decision, he was never deemed of a crime. He was never actually accused and fully processed of doing a crime. And of course, there were other people who accused, like the people from the Finding Neverland documentary, who never got as far as court because of payout settlements. Right. So again, there's a lot of questionable stuff around it, but in the eyes of the law, he was always deemed innocent. And so again, there is a level of moral dilemma that I actually agree with you on to some extent, Matt. I think it's up to the person and how they feel about it.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. And unfortunately, the closest that we'll ever get is in the eyes of the law saying, no, he did not do anything that we deem illegal and thus he is not charged. That said, it's still fucking weird that he would be in bed with little kids. I could not dream of, like, I'm a substitute teacher. I work around kids. Yeah. I could not ever dream of finding myself in a scenario where I would want to end up in bed with a child. It's just, like, even if it's completely innocent, it's fucking weird.
It is.
And again, there's a whole level of, people have questioned his mental health and how he was as a person. And, there's the whole, like, did he ever actually grow up because of his childhood trauma? Like, there's so much to this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the movie's never going to cover that. It's just going to cover him as the idol. And so I think that's where people have a problem with this existing, is it is going to just glorify him and treat him as the idol. And so I get it. If you're somebody who doesn't support this film and you don't want it to exist, I totally understand it. But at the end of the day, it's art. So I think it does have a right to exist.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all I had to say. I agree with you on that one, Aaron.
So yeah. Tyler, if you had any thoughts, if not, totally cool. But you're the only one so far who hasn't spoken, so I just wanted to give you the floor in case you did.
I mean, honestly, I don't have that much experience with Michael Jackson. He's pretty much become just a parody to me because of movies and TV and everything. I've learned more about Michael Jackson through South Park than I've learned it through anything else.
That's ignorant. That's ignorant.
It's I mean, obviously, if he's done all these things that are really bad, I don't want them to do anything that's going to glorify that or make it try to make it seem like it's okay. But I really don't know what this movie is going to be about, so I can't really say what, because I mean, I'm sure there was a time period of his life where he was doing some stuff that we would like to see, and that would be interesting for a lot of people. So if they show those parts, I think it's fine. As long as they're not using trying to just make it as tame as possible, I think that would really upset people.
And what they could do with this movie too is almost like the Steve Jobs movie that came out with Michael Fassbender, where it focuses on like maybe 3 specific moments, like big moments in his early career. Maybe that's what they could do as well with this movie. And then really like I totally agree with you, Aaron. Sleeping in a bed with a kid, like if it's your son, your daughter, that's one thing. But if it's some random kid, it's weird. It's something I couldn't do. But like, he, I think, had something in his head and something messed up where he was more childlike, is how he was described, where he was more of like a kid. And like there were things that happened in his early childhood that could have messed with him, that made him think, oh, this is okay. And maybe he didn't do anything at all. Maybe he did something. No matter what, it's weird. And I would hope, for the sake of the kids, that it was oh, nothing happened. It was just like a sleepover. Weird, but for their sake and mental health and stuff, I hope it's just like like we're just gonna sleep on a bed and nothing's gonna happen. Shouldn't have happened, but things happen. Plus, McCulkin or whatever, he Home Alone kid, Macaulay Culkin, he talked about filming with Michael Jackson and working with Michael Jackson, just described how Michael Jackson never approached him in any way like that. It was like super nice and sweet and stuff. So I don't know, it's all that stuff he said, she said. I think the smart way to do it is to do it like the Steve Jobs movie, where you focus on a few big moments in his career. You don't have to dive into his life. Maybe his early childhood life, you can get into that a little bit, but it probably would be the safe bet just to handle it like the Steve Jobs movie. Just focus on maybe Thriller and, some of the other stuff. Like at that point, that might be the smart way to do it, because then, that might, I guess, appease both sides, or most of both sides.
Well, I think if you're somebody who's anti-Michael Jackson, I don't think anyone making any type of movie about him is going to appease you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. So we'll go ahead. I'm assuming we're all finished with that. We'll go ahead and move on to something.
Unless they end with a gruesome Tarantino level take on the Pepsi commercial.
There you go.
Then it'll be a trick to appease the anti-Michael Jackson crowd all along.
That's true. That might do it. If Michael Jackson's hair goes up in flames like that chick from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, then
I wonder if they're gonna like kind of take inspiration from Eddie Murphy's stand-up. I think it's Raw, where he joked about Michael Jackson being a complete dick. Get off me, motherfucker.
Probably not, because I don't want to pay Eddie Murphy. But no. Unless he's in the movie, right? Which, you know what? I'll take it. Eddie Murphy needs a good movie.
And look, if they took inspiration from Patton Oswald or whatever from Parks and Rec for Book of Boba Fett, then you could do the same with Eddie Murphy.
Yes. Oh, he nailed it, man.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to the final topic of the show before we wrap it up. And this is legacy sequels are a huge thing in Hollywood. We're just a few weeks away from the release of Scream 6, which is the latest of that. And this week, not one, but two different legacy sequels were announced. So the first is on the heels of Scream returning to theaters for a sixth go-around. Another 90s horror franchise is getting the revival treatment. According to an article from Deadline, Sony is moving forward with the film, a third entry of the I Know What You Did Last Summer series. Talks are currently in progress with Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. to return and reprise their roles from the first two films, as well as bringing series producer Neil H. Moritz back on as well. The film is set to be directed by Jennifer Robinson, who directed 2022's Do Revenge on Netflix, and is being written by Leah McKendrick, who is yet to have a feature film release that she penned, but she is the screenwriter of the upcoming Grease prequel film Summer Lovin'. The franchise is getting a revival after an attempted one on Amazon in 2021 when it was rebooted as a series that was executive produced by James Wan. However, the series was canceled after one season due to low viewership. Similarly, on the legacy sequel train, Vin Diesel's Riddick is rising from the grave for one more go-around. This week it was announced that Riddick Furia, as I believe is how that's said, was announced officially as in active development. Writer-director David Twohy, who was in charge of all three previous entries, will once again return to write and direct this entry, which will focus on Riddick finally returning to his home world as it sits on the brink of war for its existence. The announcement comes as Diesel is looking to close out two major chapters of his career, with Diesel expected to exit Marvel following Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 alongside his other cast members, and the Fast and Furious franchise publicly stating there are only two entries left before conclusion, with Fast 10 coming out later this year. So with that said, we have two films. Oh, sorry, I just saw that. Madi, if you got to head out, man, all good. Thank you for being a part of the show, man.
I'm just going to make my thoughts on this one. I care not at all about either of these legacy sequels. Vin Diesel hasn't done shit, honestly, since The Iron Giant. I don't care what they did last summer, 20 years ago. I don't care what they did this summer. I don't care what they do next summer. I'm sorry, man, just straight up. Also, Kevin Spacey's going to play Michael Jackson at the end of the movie in the biopic. That's the only thing that can make it work.
That's how you appease them. That's how you appease them.
Oh, no.
Make sure everyone is happy, right?
Yeah.
Just have...
He's too good an actor. Be Oscar-worthy.
And then also make sure there's an R. Kelly biopic, too, because, you know, we deserve to see that story, too.
Pissing in the Mouth, the movie.
Oh, I was just going to say Golden Showers, the R. Kelly story.
Golden
exactly.
R. Kelly story. There you go.
Who's
going to play R. Kelly? Jesse Smollett.
Thank you for joining us, man. Have a great night. We will see you next time we have you on.
Big kiss for me. See you later, bud.
Good seeing you, boys.
All right, so I'll turn it over. So we have I Know What You Did Last Summer 3 and Riddick 4. I echo Madi's sentiments. I brought this up more so to bring up the topic of legacy sequels in the first place. Why the fuck are two franchises that had middling results at best getting, like, is that where we're at in Hollywood now, that we're just rebooting anything that made a lick of money to try and pick up some type of profit? I mean,
so
like,
let me tell you about Jenna Ortega's performance in Scream 5. Nah.
So here's what I'll say
Stop spoiling
about
future
Riddick.
matches.
So I'll say it's about Riddick. When I heard this, I was like, finally, because ever since the third one came out, they've been talking about doing this movie. They've been like, we're going to do the movie. And I believe Vin Diesel has been putting out storyboards for this movie for a while too. Like, so when I heard this was announced, like, well, that's expected. Like, why did this not come out sooner? Look, the movies, like Riddick movies, they're not like $200 million movies. They're movies that you can make for, an affordable budget. It's not gonna be like Fast and Furious, where it's gonna be one of the most expensive movies of all time. You can do this for pretty affordable, and you'll make a return. I really enjoyed the third Riddick movie. I really enjoyed that movie. Second one's not that good. Pitch Black, I think, is another one that's really good too. So if they can stay kind of in the vein of a Pitch Black or Riddick, I think this is one that's going to be a pretty good movie. This is definitely out of like Fast and Furious and Triple X. It's my favorite of the Vin Diesel movies.
I was gonna say we're due for another Triple X, right? We're
Yeah,
bring
we're
that
gonna get
one
one
back
more.
to
We gotta get
again.
one more.
Yeah.
Gotta get the fourth. But it makes sense. We're gonna get Riddick, and then I see what you did last summer, last year. Okay, it's a cheap movie. You're gonna get, your two lead stars back in it. I'm sure they'll do it for next to nothing. I mean,
Yeah,
Freddie
Freddy's
Prinze
a cool
Jr. What's he
cat.
gonna do? Like Freddie Prinze Jr. He's gonna release a cookbook.
Yeah,
in
to
between
be fair,
this
Freddie
and that
Prinze
movie.
Jr. is probably living off that Star Wars money still.
Yeah,
They got paid.
and that's
well.
true. So I don't blame him for doing nothing, but it makes sense. Look, this is going to be a small budget movie. Who knows? Maybe they'll do a good job. I'm actually going to watch Scream 5 after the show because I haven't seen Scream 5, and I'm going to go see 6 because I think 6 looks really good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I Know What You Did Last Summer in 2002. Maybe that would be a pretty solid film. I don't know. But yeah, Riddick makes a lot of sense. And it's like with Spartacus. We talked about Spartacus a little bit last week with the DC casting. Spartacus, that was another thing like Riddick where it seemed like they were going to do another thing later. Like they're going to do a second, or a sequel series to Spartacus. It just never happened till now. And now we're going to get Riddick. We're going to get a sequel that probably should have came out shortly after the previous one.
Probably.
I don't know why it took so long. Like we should have got Riddick 4 before Triple X. I'm sorry.
I still can't believe we got a third one of those. Jake, Tyler, what are you guys' thoughts on these two franchises? Is there any interest at all in these sequels?
I mean, I'll go see them. Like, there's definitely I'll definitely go see them.
This is one of those I have a list. I'll go watch it. Sure.
I'm always a big fan of.
Okay.
Slashers.
Sorry, cut you off.
Oh, I'm always a big fan of slashers. So obviously, I know you did last summer coming back. At least will fill that void in my heart for that movie, that type of movie. So I'm down for that. And Riddick will always be the movie that kind of will always be what I had hoped Doom would be, and with lots of alien body counts and just him just having to do some sort of objective where he has to kill a bunch of aliens. So I'm down for it. I don't hate it. I'm intrigued to see what they do. But yeah, I'm not jumping for joy about it. Oh my god, this is the dream. This is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, So the thing with I Know What You Did Last Summer is I get what they're going for because it's Scream was the teen slasher back in the 90s, and now it's we can do a younger cast, and the older cast have gray hair, and it'll be oh, they've aged. And Freddie Prinze Jr. has a ton of gray hair to go around, but it's I feel there was never enough of a franchise here to make it worth the only thing that I can say for this film outside of the fact of if it's decent, I'll watch it because again, go see whatever. Is I hope they jack the title of because for people who don't know, there was technically a third one of these, but it was direct to DVD in 2007. But the title was "I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer," and that feels like the perfect title for a legacy sequel. Especially because at this point, even at the point that that film came out, Last Summer was not Last Summer anymore. So it's just the perfect level of I never saw Do Revenge, but I heard a lot of good things about it. I heard that people really enjoyed it.
I loved it.
Okay, yeah. So you've seen it. What are your thoughts on the film? Because it's the same director coming over.
Yeah, I forgot you mentioned that, and I wanted to go on that. That is, I really dug that flick. It's in the vibe of Heathers, if you've seen that. And that's, that's a good flick. So I think that is super appropriate for I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Or we tie it back into the Inside Out, and since the characters now have Alzheimer's, it's I Forgot What You Did Last Summer.
There you go. That's how you do it.
Oh my god, they played through the entire plot of the first one, not remembering when it happens.
Right. Well, did you see Sarah Michelle Gellar? She was asked about this, and it's hey, are you going to be in this new one? She's like, well, I died in the third one. And they're like, well, actually, and she's like, no, I died in the third one. And
Or
then
the
she,
first
you
one,
know,
you
like
mean?
I guess she was talking to whoever is, you know, cast in the movie. She's like, no, I died in the last one. Like, no, you know, technically that one doesn't count. She's like, no, I'm dead. She's like, and we eventually came to the conclusion of I died in the movie.
That's funny.
But so she'll be in the movie, I'm sure. But no, and then we're getting another Legacy sequel later this year with The Exorcist, I believe, right? Or is that a remake?
I think it's a
So that is a reboot.
Okay, I didn't know if
Remake,
that was going to
reboot.
be
It's getting
the
a
sequel or
trilogy, so I
whatever.
don't know what you want to call it, but yeah, it's a remake. It's a reboot.
Okay, I didn't know if it's gonna be like Halloween, where like the first one counts, but all the others don't. I don't
Actually,
know if they're gonna do that with
now I gotta
Exorcist.
look it up because it is David Gordon Green. They could do some fuck shit with it.
Let's see.
Yeah, because I mean, I would prefer them make this like the sequel and not reboot the original or remake the original. Like, I would prefer.
I think you're gonna
That'd
have
be
fun with
cool.
Scream 5, Matt.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know why I haven't watched it till tonight. I mean, it's been on what, Peacock or Paramount for a while now.
Paramount, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that. I tried watching it a couple days ago, but my internet was acting up. And every time I would start watching it, it would go back to the menu. And it's like, I'm trying to watch the movie. I haven't even seen a second of it. It goes back to the menu every time. So I'm hoping that I can watch it tonight. We'll see. But yeah, I wasn't sure with The Exorcist. I know Salem's
Okay,
Lot is
so I've
gonna
just
be
looked it up. So it is a legacy sequel. Yeah.
okay. That's what I thought.
So it's the plot of it is the father of a possessed child, played by Leslie Odom Jr., desperate for help, goes in search of someone who had similar experiences in Chris McNeil, played by Ellen Burstyn, who's returning. Yeah, it's a sequel.
Nice. Nice. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it's good. I like the first Halloween he did.
I hope that this goes the way of the Halloween franchise, and that by the time we get to the third one, we've moved on to a completely different protagonist, and
It's
like
not
this.
even the devil or whatever. It's just it's something else that's controlling it.
It's not
Somebody
the
else
devil.
has.
It's Pazuzu. Okay, that is.
It's going to be somebody who takes inspiration and wants to become the next.
Can we bring James Earl Jones back? He was in one of these. Can we bring him
might as
back?
well.
That'd be.
Make him the priest.
He was like a demon or something in one of them. Bring him back. That'd be fun.
Slimer from Ghostbusters.
Hey, let's get him.
Okay, so unless anyone has any more thoughts on Riddick, or I Know What You Did Last Summer, last chance.
Riddick's a bald brother, so I'm cool with it. Maybe they can cast me as his idiot cousin.
They are going to the home planet, so you never know. Let's campaign. We'll campaign for Jake to get a role in Riddick.
Let's go.
With that, guys, we'll go ahead and wrap up the show. Thank you so much to anyone who tunes in and watches these. As always, we'll try and bring some fun discussion each and every week. With that said, though, be sure, as always, since we are connected, to tune into Movie Battleground. We have matches every single week. As we said, two of our guests tonight, Tyler and Madi, both had matches go up this week. Technically, it's a spoiler for those matches, but they were both matches that they won. But it's not about the result. It's about the journey along the way and how they won it. And some great arguments as well. So tune in, check those out, support the channel. And I'll go ahead and run it around. Jake, thank you for being here, sir. Any final thoughts or anything to plug for yourself?
No, thank you very much for having me. I'm pretty glad I hopped in on this impromptu conversation, and I was at least somewhat knowledgeable enough to hang and talk about it for the most part. So it was a cool time. Plugs, I'm here on TMG doing Battleground, doing Team Geek with my partner Sandy Robinson. And I'm also over at Henry Confidential's channel, whatever that is. I can never remember. And also over at the Pierce Co. doing ASAT and fun things like that sometimes.
All right, Tyler, thank you for being here, man. We'll have to, based on the interest earlier, we'll have to get you back some week where there's a big DC story. We'll get you in there and talk about that.
Hey,
but
next week, trailers. Got the Flash trailer.
Oh, that's true. Oh, yeah, Super Bowl is happening, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there are trailers. Shit, you're right. Anyways, Tyler,
There's a lot
anything
of
that you want to
trailers.
plug or get people to support, and any final thoughts?
Don't really have anything to plug. Happy to be here to have a conversation. Glad I was able to put something into this, because I was looking at like the list of the questions and I was like, a lot of the stuff's out of my wheelhouse. So it was kind of cool just to be able to listen a lot. I think there's a lot of really interesting conversations, and you guys definitely made me piqued my interest in a couple things that I'm going to probably go check out after this. So I definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely. Love to have you back in the future, man. Matt, of course. So for the next couple of weeks, Matt's going to be out of town.
Yes.
So I'll try and have a different member of the team be here to co-host the show with me. But Matt, any final thoughts before we check out? Any plugs for yourself?
Yeah, no, it's always fun to do shows like this. I will be on the road heading to Orlando at this point, so I will not be able to be on at that point. And then the following week, I'm going to be heading home from Orlando, so I won't be on as well for that. But
He specifically planned his drive for 8
Yeah.
p.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah, I specifically planned it. Maybe I'll be available at like, I don't know, 9:50 or something. But no, you can of course find me on the show when I'm available to be on the show. Also, I have Inside the Horseshoe. It's my Colts channel. Talk about Colts football, and then I have Grab the Remote, which is where I upload my movie reviews. Next week there's going to be a lot of stuff because Tuesday got a out of the theater reaction to Marlowe. Wednesday full review for that. Wednesday out of the theater reaction for I think everybody's most anticipated movie, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Full review on Thursday, and then a full review for Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania on Thursday as well. It's a lot. It's a lot of driving. I don't like it, but whatever. It's fine. So that's where you find me.
Absolutely. And once again, guys, thanks so much for watching the show and support. And tune into Movie Battleground and support it every week because we have matches going up. Again, every single week we have matches. This week, to plug the matches that are coming up, I'm not 100% sure what the Wednesday match is going to be because the match that was supposed to upload, Facebook page and check the schedule, has had some production delays, so I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be that match that uploads. But this upcoming Friday, we have someone that Mr. Jake mentioned down there, Jordan Owens, returning to the Battleground. He'll be taking on Alec Miller in what was an incredibly friendly debate because those two get along really, really well. So tune in and check that out for some fun discussion. And come back next week. I guess you're right. The Super Bowl will be happening. So next week will probably be a lot of discussion about the different trailers and stuff. So we will see what happens then. But on behalf of everyone here at TMG, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.